welcome back to our channel. So today we are going to talk about driving license in New Zealand. So I thought that it is quite an important topic to talk about because when I first decided to come to New Zealand, this is also the first thing that I have considered about, as we all need transportation to travel around. Before jumping in and talking about how can we convert our Malaysia driving license to New Zealand driving license, I will brief through the whole process in getting a New Zealand driving license to make things clearer, okay? Here is the flow of getting a driving license as shown in the picture. To break it down means that you have to get a learner license and then it can proceed to the restricted and full license. So the process is quite similar like Malaysia, but actually that is a slight different. In New Zealand, you're only able to get the learner license when you are 16 years old. And in order to obtain the license, you have to sit for a theory test, and of course you have to pass the theory test. Usually we will prepare the theory test by using this application because the practice question is quite similar to the exam questions. So after the practice, once you feel confident about that, you can choose to either book the test or you can sit for the theory test straight away. Please take note that you have to pass the eye test before sitting the exam. But don't worry about that, it's just a very simple eye test. You can book the test through the test center AA or VTND. The theory test, it costs about $96.10. The theory test is computer based, which is multiple questions. You have to get 32 out of 35 in order to pass the theory test. Once after you pass the test, congratulations, which you're able to get a temporary learner license, and until you receive the real learner license through your mailbox, they will send it to you through the mail. In Malaysia, we'll call it as L license, which is same in New Zealand. And obviously you have to display your L plate in front of your car and on the rear of your car. However, you will be only able to drive when you have your supervisor on your side. Supervisor means that the person have hold their full license for 2 years or more than 2 years. And you are not allowed to carry any passenger. You will be only able to do so after getting the approval from the supervisor. Because if there's anything happen, the supervisor have to bear all the consequences about that. If you have against the license condition, the police able to claim your vehicle, take your keys, ask you to drive straight home, or maybe stop you from driving. One of the good news is that after having the learner license, you're able to drive the mob. It's something like motorcycle but it's slightly different. It looks like this. But you are not allowed to carry any passenger and only able to drive between 5 AM to 10 PM. Learner license will be expired in 10 years. After 10 years, if you want to renew it, you have to sit for the theory test in order to renew it. Now you might say that, I don't want to get restrictions from it. I don't want to get approval from the supervisor every time when I want to drive or I want to carry a passenger. So in order to do so, you have to get your restricted license. In order to get the restricted license, you have to hold your learner license for 6 months. Only then you're able to book for a practical driving test. The practical driving test, it will cost roughly 167.50. In order to pass your exam smoothly, it will be more advisable to go for a coach, like hire a coach, in order for you to familiarize the route and also the test. One thing that's different from Malaysia is that when we are having a practical driving test, we just have to present to the center and they will provide a car for us to do the practical test. But in New Zealand, it's quite different, which we ourselves have to bring the car along in order to do the practical test. If you don't own one, then perhaps you need to hire one or maybe borrow from your friends or your family. Also, you have to make sure that the vehicle that you are going to use during the test, it needs to have a current certificate of fitness, a current license label, a current road user charge license if required, and also the car needs to up to WAF standard. And also all the lists that have shown in this photo. Obviously it's too much, so it will be better that if you guys can glance through or read through all by yourself. Hence, usually before the test, we will go for a pre-drive check to make sure that the vehicle that we are going to use is in a good condition. Another thing that is quite different from Malaysia is that during the practical test, we able to bring along a support person, but there's a term and conditions for the support person which is shown in this photo. Again, it's too long for me to read out one by one, so it'll be better for you guys to glance through by yourself. The test will take about an hour, which included meeting the officer and pre-check your car. Also 45 minutes of practical test. Last but not least, get your result. Once after you have passed the exam, congratulations, now you're able to get the temporarily restricted license. You will be receiving the real license through the mailbox, which is same as the learner license. By having the restricted license, now you're able to remove your L plate. And in Malaysia, you'll be required to put up the P plate. But in New Zealand, I have not seen anyone have the plate on the car, so I assume that it's not 100% compulsory things to do it. Now, you can drive the car all by yourself without getting approval from the supervisor, provided that you are driving between 5 AM to 10 PM. If you are driving out of the range of the time that I've mentioned, then you will need a supervisor to be along with you in order to drive the car. Now, you are able to take some passenger, not all passenger, only some passenger that have listed on this photo. Not that if you are driving an automatic vehicle during the test, then you will be only allowed to drive automatic vehicle. If you are driving a manual vehicle, you will still need a supervisor on your side. Now, you might say that, I wish to be a supervisor in the future, or I don't want to get any restrictions of my license. Then, in order to do so, you will need to proceed to getting a full license. In order to get a full license, you will need to hold your restricted license for a minimal amount of time, which depends on your age and whether have you sit for the advanced driving course. I will break into two categories as shown in the photo. Once you have met the requirements, you're able to book for a full license practical test, which costs you around $98.90. Yes, you're right. You have to sit for the test again in order to obtain your full license, which is different from Malaysia, because in Malaysia, once we have hold our restricted license for 2 years, it will automatically convert to CDL, which we call it as full license. But in New Zealand, unfortunately, you have to sit for a test again. So the practical test, it will last for 30 minutes. It's just to assess whether your driving skill is skillful enough to obtain the full license. Once you have passed the test, congratulations! Now, you don't have any restrictions about that. You can carry any passenger that you wish to, and you can drive anytime you wish to. Also, you're able to drive any vehicle that lists under the Class 1, which I will attach a link in the below. The expiry date for a license is the same as well, which is 10 years. So basically, this is the full flow in getting a driving license in New Zealand. If you are Malaysians and you have a Malaysian driving license and you also plan to come to New Zealand, there's a good news for you, which is that you don't have to go through all the obstacles from the beginning, which is a learner license, until restricted and full. You can legally drive in New Zealand for a year. If after a year, only then you need to sit for a theory test, and after you pass the theory test, you were able to get the restricted license instead of the learner license. And then you can choose to whether upgrade your license to full license or you remain your restricted license. Like me, though I'm able to go for the full license, but I still choose to stick with my current license because the restricted license is sufficient for me. Yeah. Next is the renewal fee. So the renewal fee basically is all the same for all the license holder, which is cost you around 32.40 cents. But if you are age 64.5 age and above, then it will be a different standard for the renewal fee, which is shown in the table. Next, alcohol limit. So if you are age under 20, then you cannot drive if you had any alcohol. But if you are age above 20, then you're able to drive if you have some alcohol. provided that you does not have more than 50 mg of alcohol per 100 mg of blood, or 250 microgram of alcohol per liter of breath. So now I'm going to talk about my own experience in getting a restricted license in New Zealand, and also some experience in driving in New Zealand. First is that I obtained my restricted license quite early because there's a lot of unforeseen and unexpected event that you will need to prove your identity and your age in New Zealand. For example, if you go for a restaurant and you order anything that related to alcohol, you will need to prove your age. If you go for a supermarket, you get some alcohol, you will need to prove your age. So if you get a spray pen in New Zealand, you will need to prove your age as well. I find that it's quite dangerous for us to carry our passport every time. Also, it's quite troublesome. That's why I choose to go for the driving license to substitute the passport. So I just have to carry my driving license right now, which is very convenient, just like in Malaysia is like IC. And is that although in New Zealand we are driving on the left hand side of the road, which is same in Malaysia, but I find that there's something is quite different. Like New Zealand road is more windy, more steeper, more narrow, and some of the giveaway rules is quite different. I still remember that the things that freak me out the most is the traffic light and the road in New Zealand, and I will break it down one by one, provided with some examples so you guys have a clear understanding about that. So the first thing is that there's a special lane for bicycle in New Zealand because people love to bike here. You have to aware about that. It looks like this, which is the green color path, and it's just right next to the road. So you really have to be careful and you have to aware about that and make sure you don't drive through the lane. Second is the crossing. There's a lot of different crossing in New Zealand, and you really have to be cautious about that because you are required to stop and let the pedestrians or the bicycle to cross the road. The first crossing is the pedestrian zebra crossing, which sometimes it will occur in front of the traffic light or maybe in the middle of the road. And you really have to stop and give way to pedestrians, and sometimes the pedestrian will feel that I'm the king of the road and you have to look after me instead of I look after you. So we have met a few scenarios before where the pedestrian, they will just tend to walk straight to the crossing instead of looking left and right. Yeah, so really have to be careful about that. Is the here crossing, also called as a school crossing point. It's more on like a mono thing, it's not fixed on the road. So we have to stop when the sign is held out, and we will only able to pass through when the sign has been withdrawn. The third is the country street crossing, which usually made of bricks or paving or raised above the level of the road, which you can think of like a bumper, but it's made in bricks, which is the same. We have to stop and let the pedestrian cross the crossing. Next one is the crossing railway line safely, which in Malaysia, I don't think we have this crossing. Some of the crossing, they will have the active bells, light, or the barrier arms. Then you have to wait until the bells and light have stopped and the barrier has moved out of the way. Somehow, some railway does not have any bells, light, or barrier, so you really have to look left and right and make sure that there's no train are coming. Only then you cross the railway lines. The next one is a cycle crossing, which normally you'll have the traffic light showing that cyclists able to cross the road right now. Sometimes the cycle crossing may share with the pedestrian crossing and they will have two traffic lights showing as above. But sometimes they might not have any traffic light showing it. So we have to be careful about that. Now we'll move on to talk about traffic light, which is the part that have freaked me out the most in New Zealand. First, in New Zealand, you will see traffic light look like this, and usually you can't even see what is in front of the road. The waiting time for the traffic light to turn into green is quite long, which sometimes you will have doubt on yourself whether is this traffic light still working or not. Yeah, but you just have to wait until the traffic light turn green because it's very dangerous for you to cross the road if the light is still red color. Another case is that the traffic light is sort of different compared to Malaysia, because in Malaysia, once the traffic light turn green, the opposite lane of the car, they will stop and let you either go straight or turn left or right. But in New Zealand, it's quite different. So now you can see the light turn green and the car on the opposite is keep going. But what if I have to turn right? What should I do? Should I just wait in the middle, or should I just try to drive when I see there's an empty space or what? In New Zealand, you really have to wait all the car cross by, only then you turn right. There are still quite a lot of giveaway rules in New Zealand. I will just provide a few examples. For example, like in this photo, both of the car wanted to turn into the same path. In this case, the red car needs to give prioritize for the blue car to turn first, because the blue car is more closer to the lane he wants to go to. Another example is that in the T zone, the blue car wanted to turn to the right hand side, but there's a car coming through, which is the red car wanted to go straight. So in this case, blue car need to give way to the red car, only then he can turn to the right hand side. I will provide more given example for you guys, attach a links below, because there's too many, impossible for me to point out one by one. Yeah. The next one I will talk about is the roundabout. So in Malaysia, I always wanted to avoid roundabout because I hate it. I always feel afraid when I approach the roundabout. But in New Zealand, you can't avoid it because it happens everywhere. Even there's a few roundabout outside of my house, I have to pass through I think 5 or 6 roundabout for me to get to school, which is just like a 50-minute destinations. Yeah, so I can say that now I'm a master of roundabout. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, there's some rules in roundabout as well. The first one is that roundabout, if you're planning to go straight, you don't have to signal when you are coming out on the road, but you have to give signal on the left when you are approaching to the lane and go straight. Okay, so if for example you are planning to go to your right hand side of the roundabout, you have to give the right hand side signal when you are waiting on the lane, and then when you approach to this lane, you have to give the signal on the left to let the people hear, knowing that okay, you are going to this lane, so the car can come out. The next scenario is that there is a specific lane for the car, indicate that which way you want to go. For example, as shown in the photo, you can see that the motorcycle is trying to go straight, and the lane that he is beyond is either turning to left hand side or go straight. Next is the car. You can see that the car wanted to approach to the right, so that's why when he is waiting on the lane, he already gave the signal on the right. Okay, this is the thing that I mentioned just now. Currently the lane that he is in is on the lane either go straight or turn right. So in New Zealand, you really have to be aware of it. You really have to be on the specific lane. There are still a lot of giveaway rules, so I will attach a link on the below so you guys can read through about that. The fifth is the speed limit. In Malaysia, we have a lot of the highway, but it's different in New Zealand. We don't have a lot of highway, even though we do have, sometimes it will appear like 90 km/h, but suddenly it will show the speed limit, maybe it's like 35 because of the route that we have in New Zealand. Also, they will be having a different speed limit when you are in the residential zones or in the town area. So you have to be cautious about that, because you have to keep the limit. Else you will get summoned from the police, which is like a fine from the police. Next is the vehicle with trailer, which I believe in Malaysia we don't really see it quite often, but we will always see it in New Zealand. Means that there's a car having a trailer on their back, so you really have to stay far apart from it, don't stick close with them. So here is all the tips and tricks in having a driving license in New Zealand. If you are not planning to drive or get a driving license in New Zealand, don't worry about that. In New Zealand, we have a lot of bus service, but one thing that I find out is that different town, different city have their own bus provider. I'm not sure why different town have different policy, if you want to get a bus service. Like for example, in Auckland, if you want to get a bus service, you need to have a card to do so. You cannot pay by cash. You have to register a card through online, or you have to get from the airport. In Wellington, they will have different bus provider, and maybe they can pay by cash, some maybe can pay by credit card. Yeah, and the time schedule provided is different as well. So I suggest it will be better for you guys to research by your own. For example, if you want to go to Christchurch or Otago, then probably you will need to be specific that bus service provider in Otago. And it will be pop up with all the information that you want. The next thing is getting a second-hand car in New Zealand. We can do it by two ways. The first is that we can go with a car dealer, which normally it will be more pricier, but I will feel that it's more safer. Next is we can get from the marketplace or Trade Me, which the price will be slightly cheaper or way cheaper, but a lot of things we have to aware about. Like we need to check the wharf, we need to check the regal, the car conditions, and once we get the car, we need to transfer the ownership all by ourselves. Usually we will trace the car history by using the Carjam for us to know that whether this car is still on debt, whether this car has been stolen before or not, or any history like get into car accidents and so on, which is way more complicated, I would say, from my own experience, because I have go through both of it before. I will find that the first option will be slightly expensive, but you don't have to worry about some extra cost of the car because everything has already been checked by the car dealer, so you just have to take care of your car properly. However, for the second options, it will have a lot concerns about that, whether is there any extra cost I will need to incur in the future. Some friends, they get from the marketplace, and in return they need to pay a lot of the money to repair their car. But I also have some friends, they get the car from the marketplace in a good conditions. So I would say it depends on the luck. It will be better if you have a friend that have a well knowledge about the car to help you to go through everything about the car. I will attach two links below. The first is about the Carjam. The second one is about what you need to know before getting a second-hand car. So I believe that's a lot for today. I hope that both of us learned something. And if there's any questions, you are feel free to comment below. So I will see you in the next video. Goodbye! 路到那太阳瞎掉了。
再多一次我包你哭了。撸走啊，2个电池 ，OK。要跳上灯。打很好。